the best radio station ever, with me, Frankie Rose. So I hope you're all keeping well and that this week's been good to you. But whatever's on your mind, try and sit back and relax and enjoy the conversation tonight with the mesmerizing bipolar explorer, a New York based experimental dream pop wonder. So I'm hoping on the line I have bipolar explorers Michael. Hello and welcome, Michael. Hi,
Hello.
Michael. Oh,
Hello.
yes. Hi,
Success.
Michael.
Hi. I was so
I say,
nervous that this wasn't going to work.
honestly, every week I say to people, it is so lovely to hear a voice at the end of the technical line, with all these
For sure.
glitches and passwords and oh,
Yes. Pop-ups.
so yeah. So how you doing, Michael?
I'm hanging in there, like us all. It's a very strange time to be alive on the planet, but, we're doing what we can, right?
Yeah. And are you in New York itself with the floods and everything?
I am, yeah. We had trouble with our ceiling because they broke the record for the most rainfall in an hour last
Wow.
week, and then we doubled the record 2 days ago. First after Henri, and then after Ida. So
What is
yeah, so
going
the
on?
ceiling was leaking. I had to move the bed and just like, but at least we're up on the fifth floor. So I know people who have a friend of mine. Uh, one of the DJs over at WFMU, he posted a thing, and it, like, I don't know if he's in a basement or he's on the first floor, but like the whole floor, like
Yeah.
water everywhere, and he's got like
Gee.
musical equipment and all of his
Oh,
CDs and his broadcast stuff, and it's
nightmare.
insane. Yeah,
And is it
climate
getting any
change
better?
is
Is it
real.
easing?
Yeah, I mean, the next day it was like amazing. The next day,
Yeah.
yesterday was like beautiful, late summer day, and but you could see, like, I run in the in Riverside Park, and you could see all the trees that were down, and places that are usually just paths are now wetlands. It was like
Yeah.
crazy. Sylvia sent me. I didn't even see this, but Sylvia sent me a picture from up in Central Park, Bethesda Fountain, the famous,
Yeah.
beautiful fountain there, and the water had like gone completely outside of the fountain because the lagoon had risen, and the ducks were like out there where people usually walk around, just like quack quack.
So they're loving it. They're the only
They're
ones.
loving it. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. So listen, before we get started,
Sure.
just
Yeah.
to let our listeners know that there's many words that have described bipolar explorer: ambient, experimental, dream pop, shoegazy, contemplative waves underscored with spoken word. What word would you use, Michael, to describe the band?
I think something along the line of dream or dreams,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, dream pop sort of has so many things fall into the category of dream pop, and I think people think of bands like Beach House, who we love. But Sylvia sort of we started calling ourselves experimental dream pop because we're kind of closer to the Delia Derbyshire, the amazing 60s recording of the Dreams. We're a bit closer to that, I think, genre-wise, partly with the spoken word, but also just, I think often songs come to me in dreams. I think this happens to other writers also, where you're in a dream and you hear something on the radio in the dream, and then you wake up and you realize that's not, on the radio. That's a transmission into my brain from someplace that we don't know. And, you grab your guitar or you grab your phone and sing into it or whatever you do. And there's obviously a lot of dream imagery in our work, but some things literally come from dreams. And I think it also just, so like of dreams, because I think a lot of it is made of that. And it also is part of our work of, that discovery of the things that, I mean, the whole thing, Norman Mailer called writing, and I think this goes for music also, the spooky art, because where does it come from? These things. And I saw the whole dreamscape sort of, I think is very evocative for us.
Yeah. Because I guess, I mean, just thinking back to, I was going to ask you about your background and if you're a born New Yorker, but you had a lot of experience and time in sort of the more punk, maybe the other extreme of the music that you're doing now. Can you talk
I
me through your
did.
journey?
Yeah, I think this is not uncommon for people of our, roughly our generation is other musicians that I know who became dark ambient musicians or discovered things uh, uh, in that experimental world were very taken by their first musical discoveries were things with the punks, because they broke down the barriers, and especially for women, broke down the barriers of, you don't have to be, classically trained and play like Jimmy Page and all of that. It's like, the famous sniffing glue thing. Here's 3 chords, start a band. And that whole do-it-yourself thing, I think, is hugely influential to a generation of us making music wherever we, landed. But I did start out like a lot of people, I think, of our ilk with that kind of music. Sort of the second wave punk stuff in America would have been like Husker Du, The Replacements. I guess REM is not really thought. There's a lot of more pop group, but their beginnings were much more DIY. And then in Britain, Wire, who then also sort of transcend that sort of a post-punk thing and lead you towards experimental stuff with the Pistols and the Clash and all of that jazz. And then later into like a one band that sort of is super influential to us as a band that's still active today. They're called Low. I don't know if you know, they're a trio from Duluth, and they brought that punk ethos, but in a really what they called slowcore, very quiet way. And they're beautiful songs, and they've been hugely influential to us throughout, the punk era and into this kind of, work we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah, and do you still make time for the extremes, the rough and tumble and energy of the punk, or do you miss it at all?
I do. I mean, the music you listen to some music that's been important to you in another point in your life, and you're transported there instantly. And sometimes you're really in the mood. I was a huge Replacements fan and a huge Paul Westerberg fan for years, and I used to always go see him when he played live. And I hadn't. Well, Westerberg hasn't put anything out in a while, but they put out a live recording, this famous bootlegged recording. They finally went official with it, of them playing out at Maxwell's in Hoboken, which is a club that doesn't exist anymore, but it's this great club. My old band played out there once, and it was all the great bands came through there, and it was it's like being in somebody's den, or their basement or something like this. But they got these great acts. But they did a 2 CD thing of the live show that they did. I think it was in '84. It's right after Let It Be. And it just rocks, as they say, rocks like murder. And sometimes you're really in the mood for that. I think our listening these days is much more in the sort of the ambient and experimental vein. But that some of those things they just remain in your bloodstream. And Frank Black said something about the records that you love the most. You don't even have to own them anymore. They're just there playing, in your brain all of the time. They're like in your gray matter,
Yeah, true. And, with your music, there is a lot of power and emotion. And I did read, Michael, that the song of Love and Loss, which is an incredibly beautiful, but it was written following the loss of your partner, Summer, Seraphin,
the
20 years
album, the
ago.
double album,
The album, yeah. And for anyone listening who may have had that sort of similar, sort of devastating experience, I was just wondering, would you mind talking us through how you process this and really what role that music play as part of that process?
For sure. I mean, the Bipolar Explorer project continues on. Summer was in the band. She was the co-founder of the group with me, and was a female lead vocalist. We sang together, and then I played, the instruments. And so all of our subsequent albums also she appears on, because I have lots of her isolated vocal tracks, and I'll write songs around her existing vocals or manipulate them in some way. And the music really is of, for, and about her to a great extent.
Yeah.
And now Sylvia as well, who's a huge member of the band, and a lot of the music is for her as well. So the three of us sort of meld. But that first album was Of Love and Loss, which is Bipolar Explorer's second record, but the first with Summer, began as a different record, obviously, completely different thing. Summer and I had gone in the studio, and we recorded we don't know if we were going to have a full album or an EP. We recorded about 7 songs. And then after her, tragic passing, she was just 31, had this horrible accident, had traumatic brain injury, and passed away. I couldn't do anything for several months. And that project just lay fallow. And then a buddy of mine called me up one day and said, "You want to jam? Just want to come over and play guitars." And
Yeah.
it's like, okay. But I really hoped that he didn't turn up, but he did. And we started playing. And just because we were running through some of the existing material, I started writing new stuff. And then once I was launched into that, it became a very different album, and a double album. And so a mix of the songs that Summer and I had gone into the studio to make this original album, and then the new songs that I brought to it became the double album of Love and Loss. Yeah, so
It is
that's
amazing how the music sort of formed part of your therapy or your
oh, for
process
sure.
for
Yeah,
getting back to
yeah, and
yourself as well.
continues to. Yeah.
Yeah, because you've said that summer. I've read somewhere before. You've said summer is the only reason for the band, as you were saying. She's your conscience, and it just made me think, if you don't mind me asking, that was such a sort of omnipresence that she's within your life and your music. Do you find that this is a constant muse and inspiration for you, or does that attachment sometimes hinder your creativity or be very overwhelming with that presence of her always there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that it's a hindrance at all. I do really think it's a very rich spring of inspiration for the work to go on, and the other things honestly come up, and the other ideas spring up, but then Summers ultimately usually gets involved in some way because it'll bring her voice in, and the overarching thing of it is a project that's for her. Other things have happened in my life as that goes on, but like that remains the focus. I feel like she's sort of like my conscience and the sort of the soul of the project in a way. And if is the thing that I've always felt about this is, if you're doing things not out of any ambition other than to honor this really sacred thing that's been given to you, you're doing the right things, because you're not just trying to get famous, or you're not trying to write a hit song. It's just this pure expression of this gift that's been given to you. And for me, it's the gift of Summer, and the gift of Sylvia coming into my life also. And when the three of us, even remotely, because now Sylvia's been in France for almost a year and a half. When we work together in this way, I just really feel it's the purest essence of this project that we've ever had. There's been like 9 people who've come in and out of this band during the time, and Summer and I were always the core of it. And I think Sylvia is certainly the equal part of that too. The three of us really sort of meld together and become this thing.
I think that's lovely. That word "pure" that you use is lovely, because it's almost like, she's alive within the music, and she's with you on that. Her presence is, it's really nice.
Yes.
You do have some beautiful tunes, I must say, but
Thank you.
one I was listening to, which we'll take a quick listen to now, is called "You Are Loved," which I think is obviously, another lovely tribute to Summer from your album "Sometimes in Dreams." So if you don't mind, we'll stop a second, Michael. We'll just take a listen to this one. This is "You Are Loved."
Disconsolate, alone, he returned to the small apartment that had been their home. Gently, reverently, he caressed her hands. Snapshots. One of her famous hot water bottles, the one with watermelon and rowan in it. Her clothing, letters. He caressed them like relics, like treasure, and quietly slipped to the floor, still clutching a favorite blouse of hers that he loved. Hugging her things close in his screams, he hoped to bring her presence into being.
So, Michael, we talk a lot in this show about music and memories.
Yeah.
How, for example, a song or its associated memories from the past um, are sometimes no longer tolerable in the present due to,
Yeah.
changed circumstances or experience. Do you
Yeah.
have any songs like that, or vice versa? Any songs that you really hated, but now actually you've warmed to over the years?
I think that the latter things that are so difficult to listen to. I think a lot of us who have been through this kind of experience have that, because the great thing about music, it immediately takes you somewhere, and sometimes things are just too painful to listen to. There's some music that Summer and I, of course, were, in addition to being musicians, we're huge music fans, as Sylvia and I are as well. And some of the music that was so dear to Summer and I is really difficult for me to hear anymore, And I remember Summer also. Summer had health problems through her early part of her life. She had type 1 diabetes, and diagnosed at the age of 5. She never thought she would live to be in her 20s. She had a double organ transplant the year before I met her that saved and changed her life. But she always felt her time here was very limited. She has a very keen sense of her own mortality.
Yeah.
And she would tell me things like, when I die, and I was like, please don't say that.
Yeah, stop.
I want you to speak at my funeral, and I want you to listen to all of our music, and not just the music that we wrote, but the music that was dear to us. And that is a tall order that's really hard, some of that music to listen to.
Sure.
And by the same token, there are other things that she really liked when we were first seeing one another that I was not fans of at all. And I think, that is easier for me to hear now, because also I get it, and I'm less of a, Sylvia may quibble with this, but less of a music snob, I think, than I was in my youth. I still get touchy about things. Sylvia would probably say, you absolutely still do that. There's things you refuse to listen to. That's wonderful. But I think I opened up a little bit with that. So I think I kind of have both things going.
Yeah. Michael, just a quick one. My
Sure.
technical manager's saying there's a little bit of reverb in my voice, but not yours. Yours is perfect.
Oh,
Have
okay.
you a speaker on or headphones?
I do. I have a
I'm getting
speaker on.
glared at here.
Okay. I don't have headphones on.
Let's see.
It's going through the monitors in the studio.
There we go.
So I turned it down a little bit. Is that
There
better?
we go. Yeah, that seems better.
Okay, good.
Am I getting a bit of a nod?
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's happy. No worries.
Okay.
Now, a little
Thumbs
fun
up?
question for you. That's fine. So Laurie Anderson once said, something
love
that
her.
has so much power must have life. Instruments have life. So as a fun question, what do you think about this? Would you say instruments have different personalities? And which one is your favorite?
Well, first of all, we absolutely adore Laurie Anderson. I just think she's fantastic. I think we all agree about that, Sylvia, Summer, and I. And when we first started, incorporating spoken word in our music, it was right around the time that she came out with Heart of a Dog. And it was like, wow, we're really on point with this, because she was using it so brilliantly with underscoring. But I think, I I'm a multi-instrumentalist, but guitar,
Hmm.
I started playing bass and then guitar shortly thereafter. And I think electric guitar is just an amazing instrument. I think of a
Yeah.
couple of things that people have said. One, Robert Pollard of Guided by Voices said that any noise that you make on an electric guitar is legitimate. And then that leads me into also something that Norman Westbrook said, the guitarist for Swans, but he's like has done such great solo work that's experimental. And he says a guitar, the electric guitar is great, but when you step on a pedal, it just takes off.
Yeah.
So the using and we use a lot of, obviously we use delay and reverse and
Yeah.
a different modeling, and that is just magic, because
Yeah.
you discover things that you never would have found without it, and then you learn to play within it and ride within the sounds, and so
Yeah.
just all of the worlds that electric guitar with pedals opens up is
Yeah.
an endless source of joy.
Endless source
Really.
of fun, yes.
Oh
And
God, yes.
do you, obviously there's all these platforms now like Logic Pro and all these things where you can,
Mm.
devise and create your music
Yeah,
online.
yeah.
Do you do much of that? Because I mean, it is amazing what can be done now rather than just, strum it through and record in the traditional way, I suppose.
Yeah, a bit of that. We do a little bit more with when we use field recordings because we'll manipulate them, but
Hmm.
mostly, and I love these programs. They're fantastic, but I still
Yeah.
use it like a 4-track. I basically mic everything and go directly in.
Yeah.
You get more tracks. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to keep bouncing down. But everything is recorded pretty straightforward, like the sounds of the guitar is everything up live. That's all pedals, and then I'm miking the
Yeah.
amps. So and vocals, reverb is always good, but that's not super complicated. You do that with whatever. But we do increasingly, and we've done a bunch of work for the Dark Outside, and almost always we start that out with
Oh yeah.
with field recording. So we're always listening to like. Hear something, and Sylvia's like, what's that? Record it now.
Yeah.
It's like, just stand there and record that. And that's been really interesting. And I will manipulate those things
Yeah.
with effects in the
Yeah.
digital workstation. But generally, we just kind of just go in and track it. So
Yeah.
I haven't availed myself of tons of that kind of stuff, but I certainly appreciate it.
Mm. And speaking of instruments, Michael, so I wouldn't say you had a car accident, but you had an accident as a pedestrian with a car, which was
Yeah.
quite brutal.
Yeah. I
And
woke up
is
in
it-
the emergency room. I didn't even
Yeah.
remember getting hit. Yeah.
So did you step out of a car and another one?
No, I was running.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
was
for 3
crossing the
weeks you
street.
couldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
And you
woke up
couldn't.
in
You
the
couldn't
ER.
play.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So what happened? Yeah. Well, it's a long story to get into all that, which we could or could not. But the question about the recovery, because what happened is
Yeah.
my legs were very badly injured, but not broken, and were really like ripped up.
Mhm.
And their main concern was my shoulder, which was broken. Briefly, there was a problem then with the legs because they just wrapped them up, and they were really deep wounds, and I wound up having a pulmonary embolism. I was dead for 10 minutes,
Jeez. Gosh.
because they didn't treat that properly.
Mhm.
But I got through that. So the thing about playing instruments was, after the shoulder surgery, I just had a very limited range of motion in
Yeah.
the left arm to fret my guitar. So, but I insisted on doing it anyway because we were in the middle of making Till Morning Is Nigh, and so I just sat down to see what I could do, and I could move to I would move the guitar and the bass actually, so
Yeah.
I would be in a range of where my shoulder could move up and down the neck
Gee.
and just stay in those positions. And when I finally got into physical therapy, because of the legs, it took like another 6 weeks before I could leave the house.
Yeah.
After I got home from the hospital, the physical therapist said, "Thank God you were so stubborn and insisting on trying to play, because it helped your
Yeah,
range of
okay.
motion. And now it's going to be a long haul, but that actually was really good that you did that." So
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and how did you get through that with the sort of loss of control? And how did you get your head around the fact that, you know, just simple things like fretting your guitar and that it was just off bounds for a while?
Well, exactly the way I just described it, is I refused to accept it. You know, it was like, it's at that point it was May, and it's like, this album has to be out by, you know, November at the latest. I need to be playing. So I just sat here trying to move. There's a video too of me like trying to play the guitar for the first time. I first I get the guitar out, and then I pick up the bass, and it's very painfully doing both. But I managed to do it, and then like, okay, so I can do this. So there's both things about acceptance. One is I'm in the middle of New York City, so we're going to hear crap like that.
Nice to hear the noise.
One is, you know, not accepting the limitation but also doing the work of whatever it was. It's like, you know, I'm just going to day by day do what I have to do to get my projects done, because we did the Tremister album too, the Sylvia and our other project, the sisters band, which Sylvia's the lead singer on. So we did work on both those albums as I then did physical therapy. And the other thing about acceptance is accept help, because that's difficult for having your own autonomy. And then you need to accept the help of people and not be, you know, I think it was a pretty good patient. Sylvia may quibble with that a little bit. Like, I had my moments of being frustrated, but you need to accept the help of other people. And then you also need to like not be completely crestfallen that like you'll never be able to do anything. That's not helpful. You just have to work toward, you know,
it's
goals.
Like, you know, a lot of people talk about taking each day at a time, one day at a time. It is so true sometimes, just to not, you know, panic yourself, looking forward, saying, I'll never get this done, and just defeat yourself before you even start.
There's a phrase that I've used because it's about, you know, mourning and life and, you know, injuries and everything. It's like, don't get caught up in the narrative. I mean, if you look at like, oh, this is so sad, and, you know, my life is this, that. When you get caught up in that, it's really impossible to do many things. So, like, that's a kind of little mantra. Is like, don't get caught up in the narrative, and just focus on the day and your goals, and do that.
Yeah. Now, you spoke there just when you were speaking about acceptance. What's your views on forgiveness? Because, Michael, you've been through a lot over the years, you know. Was there time, because I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago just about if you avoid forgiveness and just, you know, let things fester and go over and round in a circle, it's not helpful to you or anyone else around you. How did you cope with, you know, I suppose anger and forgiveness at things happening that I guess you'd no control over, but what's that? What role does that role of forgiveness play?
Yeah, I think that it's important that you're able to get to that. And it's also incredibly difficult. So I think it's something that you strive for, and you know, I think I do to greater or lesser extents. I think I'm a less, you know, prone to like incandescent rage as I was when I was younger. Again, Sylvia may quibble. She's probably listening to this and like rolling her eyes. But I think I handle things a little bit better, a little bit faster. And I certainly recognize that I have those particular flaws. And I also recognize that the goal is forgiveness and patience and you know, getting rid of negative, not dwelling in negative places. You know, you can't help your feelings. You can't, you know, quash them if they come up. But I remember someone telling me this. I think they were kind of in a Buddhist tradition of like, you know, these thoughts and feelings come up, but you know, you don't have to serve them tea. You know, just let them pass. You know, you can't like, I'm not going to think that, because you can't control that, but you also don't have to dwell. So letting go.
And as you say, it can be difficult, but you know, once you start recognizing and
that's
learning, it's just
helpful,
the way it goes. So we'll just pause there for a sec, Michael. I'm going to play a lovely track by a band called Ghost Morn, and this song is called The Depths. Back in a sec.
Okay. Great.
Ghost Morn with the Depths. Now, it's a really
That
lovely
was
song,
really
but
cool. I really like that
yeah,
track.
it's nice, isn't it? But in the middle
Yeah.
of it, I heard somebody coughing. I thought it was a distant phantom. I think you left your mic on, Michael, but
Oh, I didn't know. I'm meant to turn
that's.
it off.
I know I should. It's my technical people. They don't give me any
Sorry about that.
direction.
Yes, clearing
That's
my
no
throat.
problem.
Sorry about that.
But that's okay. But that's a nice one. That was Ghost Morn with the Depths. Anyhow, so your album Till Morning Is Nigh, spoken word underscored with the dreamy meditative instrumental. Do you find that when being creative, for you, do the words come first and then the music follows, or is it a tune first? Is it vice versa type thing?
It kind of depends on what it is. One thing too I wanted to mention about it. And thanks for playing the track. You Are Loved, which is actually I think that's the first track on the double album, Sometimes in Dreams. Those words were all in a text that Summer sent me.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredibly poetic, and also given the loss, it's like incredible affirmation. But I incorporated that, but she actually wrote. Those are words that she wrote to me. But with most of the spoken word stuff that we do, it's narrative poetry that I write. Sometimes, often telling a story things that link pieces of the album together. Till Morning Is Nigh and Sometimes in Dreams are both gapless records, so that one track flows into the next one. Our mastering guy in Boston, this guy Scott Craigs, is amazing, just mastering tracks at all, mastering the albums, was able to do really great crossfades, so that those records are both like that. But Till Morning Is Nigh is not only the spoken word, it's spoken word plus it's sort of a weird ass Christmas album in a way. It's these obscure, more obscure, mostly European, mostly unknown to American audiences anyway, Christmas carols that we've rearranged in our shoegazy kind of style. But the spoken word stuff, both on Till Morning and subsequent albums and earlier albums as well, when we started using them around, I think, Electric Hymnal around 2016 or so. Usually I write the spoken word pieces first, and then now Sylvia records them, and then I write the music. But in terms of most of the more traditional indie rock, shoegaze, dream pop songs with lyrics, generally the music comes first, and then the lyrics, because they often suggest, it starts this suggestive vocal melody, and sometimes you have a word or two or an idea, and then it starts to come forward. Aside from, Claire, as we were talking before, things that come in dreams. Sometimes things maybe not completely fully formed, but a lyric and a melody is just there in your head, and you wake up and you struggle to remember everything that you can and get it down. But I would say for the spoken word stuff, the spoken word gets written first, and then the underscoring, and then the rest, everything else is pretty much usually music first, which begins to lead you towards sounds that then become lyrics. It's just figure out, that's what this is, and that's what I'm writing about, I think, for me.
Because you said before just about the sort of spirituality of that album and the reference to the Christmas carols, but you said, and I quote, things happen that really seem to indicate that there's a hell of a lot more going on than we know about. It's an energy, a higher power. So I was wondering what your views are with regard to spirituality and religion within your life and your music, and have those views changed over the years?
Yeah, I don't remember saying exactly that, but it certainly sounds like something I'd say.
It's true. It's true. Don't sue me.
Yes. We're very litigious people here in America. No worries. I think that this isn't necessarily the greatest way to, come face to face with it, but I think when you are faced with tragedy, and grief, and I lost my father quite early in my life, and the year before, I've lost friends to suicide, and 10 months before Summer passed away, I very unexpectedly lost my mother. And I think when these things happen, it makes you, I think everybody has, to some extent, some idea of what they believe or don't believe in. And I think that when you're faced with these things, you come to examine your beliefs more.
Yeah.
Like, what is my belief system, or lack of one? It makes you examine those things. And I think that particularly, after Summer's passing, these things were in my mind, but I really had to examine them very thoroughly. And so I would say that it has changed, because I just have I have a deeper sense of mortality, and a deeper sense of spirituality subsequently as well, I'd say.
Michael, you mentioned there suicide, and I think it's almost like who hasn't been touched with the devastation that brings within family and friends.
Yes.
But do you think enough's being done? Because people do, with all these tools and resources, people are still struggling to speak out and say, how to express their emotions and say they're actually struggling. Do you think there's been enough being done in this day and age, especially for young people, and in particular probably boys and men sharing their feelings and reaching out to people?
It's hard to say. I think it's very like a lot of things. It's very much depends on where you live and what your economic status is. And then because some things are still in this day and age so incredibly stigmatized, I wouldn't say in general, but it depends on what corner of the world you're in, is how your peers and your community respond to it. So I think there's plenty of places where not nearly enough is being done, because they're living like it's 100 years ago in their mentality, and other places where things are much more enlightened and much more thoughtful. So I think people are largely at the mercy of their circumstances, and that's not. I mean, that's a case with so many things that are problems in the world for everyone.
True.
And it's. I think to some extent, it's much better when things are available for people if they can avail themselves of it. And some they're not even aware of it because their circumstances don't even allow that inquiry to happen, let alone help to arrive.
Yeah.
So overall, I'd say not enough is being done for men or women. Sylvia, when we discussed this, it's like, well, boys, fine, and she has two, but it's also like, what about girls? So it's like, I don't even think it's specifically, one or the other. It's just
gender,
more. The overall needs to be done, I think.
Yeah. So we'll talk about, a bit in a second about the lockdown and how you coped, and obviously, mental health for everyone had a real test. But I'm just going to play another little song just to have a think about that. This
Very
is
good.
10 Catastrat with Come Back When It's Over. I'll speak to you in a sec.
Okay.
So, Michael, aside from the floods that you're now experiencing, just on top of everything else, how's lockdown been and the ongoing disruption in daily life that way?
Uh,
Obviously, you say Sylvia's stuck in France, and
yeah,
how's New York been?
yeah. Well, if I can use a technical term, I'd say it sucks.
Yeah,
Um, it's a drag, and I haven't really been anywhere during all of this. I mean, I've barely been like below 42nd Street. I mean, I'm in my neighborhood. Well, I go uptown and stuff because I run, but um, yeah, it's really difficult. And I haven't seen. I'm very close to Summer's parents, and
hmm
so is Sylvia. When they first met Sylvia, they said, "Welcome to the family."
yeah,
And we like to go out and see them at Christmas, and we just like to go out and see them anytime. And Sylvia really likes California too, and haven't been able to do any of that. And
yeah.
yet Sylvia and I are working on records for both bands right now. It's Bandcamp Friday, so do uh, head over to Bandcamp if you will. But it's been very frustrating, particularly with the Tremisphere album, because uh, Sylvia, uh, we co-write songs, but Sylvia's written a lot of these just on her own,
hmm
this year, and we've got an album full of an album's worth of material, but we haven't been in the same room, and we really like
Yeah.
to like to do the basic tracks together in the same room, and then overdubs. And it's once you're in overdubs, it's fine to send stuff across the globe uh, online, digital versions, and then I can drop them into the mix. But it's really hard when they're new songs, and we haven't been in a room together to really work them out. They're all
Yeah.
demoed, so that's cool. So artistically, that's difficult, and then emotionally, it's difficult not to be with the people that you love,
Yeah, of
And
course.
we talk every day, and then
Mm.
I text with Summer's parents every day, but um,
It's not the same,
it's
is it
very hard, and
really?
we keep thinking like, oh, well, we're going to be fine, and in the spring, we're going to be fine, at July 4th, or we're going to be fine
Yeah, keeps
September, and
going.
here it is September, and it just
Thanksgiving.
goes on and on,
Yeah.
and
So is there
so
light
it's
at the
really
end of the
hard.
tunnel or
Well,
over there?
I keep thinking, but it's like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. They just keep yanking it away.
Yeah,
Not that the officials are doing anything wrong. It's the people take their damn shot. This thing would be done.
I know.
But it's frustrating to keep setting goals, and just again, there's the thing about acceptance and resentment and everything else, and you just have to try to stay positive. But it's
Yeah.
certainly going to feel frustration because it's very frustrating.
And have you had a chance for any virtual performances? Obviously, no live performances, but any of the virtual kind?
We haven't really done that aside from, and I just wanted to talk about this real briefly about the Dark Outside. There's
Oh,
this
yeah.
great, maybe some of the listeners may know about this thing. This guy, a Scottish gentleman, has been doing this for a bunch of years, where he has a 24-hour, it used to be an annual thing, a 24-hour experimental radio broadcast, usually in Galloway Forest, and I think sometimes it's been in Epping, and they have a little transmitter, and he assembles all of this stuff that people submit of unreleased material, and a lot of it's experimental music, but there's all kinds of
Yeah.
different stuff, field recordings, things like that. It's called The Dark Outside, and it was always an in-person thing. You had to be, and people would come, and stay in a lodge or something, so they could just wander around the transistor radio and hear the thing. It's not archived, it's not online or anything. But during the pandemic, he did 3 or 4 of those online for the first and only time, and you could listen to it, and we'd get up at when it started and stay up
Yeah.
all night listening to it, like kids at Christmas time, and we contributed tracks for all of that. So that's been our performance thing, has been, in addition to putting out Desange last year, and just we love radio. When we're not on it, we're listening to it, and we love radio, and that's always a thrill to be on the radio. So the performances have been that and the Dark Outside, and there's another one coming up in September. So we've just done
Yeah.
composed 2 new tracks. I'm doing final mixes on the second one right now for that, and that'll be, Sylvia would know, but it's middle of September, middle of this month, that they're going to do that, an in-person one.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
we're looking forward to.
And as an artist, do you prefer performing, or being in the melee and the actual mix of the audience? What are the sort of different energies or experiences you find? What's your favorite one?
Well, I've always loved going to shows, but they've, maybe it's going to be different after lockdown, but really had maybe this is more in New York than elsewhere, but it was less fun going to shows because people are always on their frickin' phones or talking through the
I
whole damn
know.
thing. I remember Sylvia and I were at a show at Town Hall, and these two girls, they had, they were filming the whole thing on their phones while
I
they were sitting
know.
there.
Crazy.
Can't you just be here and like do? I mean, for the whole show,
Yeah,
and
you're right. That might change. That could
yeah,
change.
a little bit of that is cool. I mean, like you want to capture the moment for yourself, for your memories, but like, but the talking thing is what I really don't get. It's like,
Yeah.
why don't you shut the hell up so
I know.
everybody else can like enjoy this? So the audiences have been a little disappointing when I've been in them, and certainly like performing in the way that we like to perform, which is
Yeah.
usually like a very intimate venue. We really like working in art galleries, and we
Yeah, I
used
was
to
going
have
to
people
say
over
art
here
galleries.
like once a month and do shows like right in the studio, which is a blast. There's so many venues in New York are not here anymore.
Yeah.
My old punk band, we used to play CVs. I must have played it like 3 dozen times, and CVs has been gone forever. It's like condos or
Mhm.
something now, and
Mhm.
tons of places are just gone. But also our music, I'm really interested in recording, and the albums, to me, I think we all agree this, are a performance in themselves, particularly considering that it's sort of a cross genre thing of the
Yeah.
spoken word and the experimental music and field recordings and all of that jazz. That is a performance in itself, and often
Yeah.
say to people who like say, when are you doing a show, and let me know. And it's like, you know what? If you would just go buy an album, don't have to get out of your pajamas. You don't have to get a sitter for the kids. You don't have to like come down and have a few drink minimum. If you want to support the band, whoever they are, not just us, buy an album.
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly.
But of course, playing live is a gas. It's a
Yeah.
total gas. So we hope that we'll be doing that again in the
Yeah. Same.
years to come.
Is there a certain piece of music then that you've seen perform or whatever that or somebody's written that you really wish, like, God, I wish I'd written that song?
You know, there isn't. I'll tell you that Summer, Sylvia, and I are all writers also,
Hmm.
So I feel that way sometimes about fiction. It's like, oh, what a great idea, damn it,
Yeah.
but I feel less about that with music. I just get addicted to listening to it. I can think of tons of things that I hugely admire. And I remember when the first time that I heard um, Bass Communion's Ghosts on Magnetic Tape, it was like, what is this? It's just awesome. But it didn't feel like, oh man, I missed my chance, like
Yeah.
I wish I'd written that. And then also, I think music influences you so much that you wind up, you know, hewing to some of those things of people that you really admire. They become influences in your own music,
Hmm.
and so there's that. So I have less of a feeling about that than I do sometimes about, oh man, that's a great idea for play, and
Yeah.
damn it, they
Yeah.
got there
Always
first,
damn it.
that kind
I
of thing.
know.
Yeah.
Um, so listen, we've only a few minutes left, so I'm just going to
Okay.
ask you this question about
Yeah.
escapism. So some
Yeah.
of my past guests have talked about music as a form of escapism.
Mm.
But do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, can escapism, become isolation if you get so into and embroiled and, sunk into the music?
I think there's a problem, and this isn't meant to be a criticism or anything, but with the word escapism, I think
Mm-hmm.
there's already like a negative connotation to that. It's like, which may be very much a Protestant work ethic of you must work and do
Yeah.
and perform and all that. That is like escape is wrong somehow. But I think if you think of more of it like transporting, then
Yeah.
I think it's like, I mean, if you change the terms, I think
Yeah. It's
that's
more
a
positive.
beautiful thing about music. It takes you out of yourself, and that's something that we all, uh, I think, agree is a wonderful thing. I think escape sounds, like abandoning, your
Yeah.
responsibilities or the people that you love, or it seems reckless,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that's just a connotation of the word. I mean, somebody else could be
Yeah.
like, escapism is a beautiful thing, but changing that into the terminology to something like, you know, something that transports you, then I
Yeah.
think, you're good.
Yeah. Yes. You know you're the writer and lyricist coming up with these
Oh, well, thank
much
you.
more
Thank you.
positive words than I have. So, Michael, we've reached the end. It's been
Okay.
really, really lovely to speak to you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad, and we're
Yeah, it
so
was
honored
cool.
that you asked us. It's really,
No, it's
really lovely.
yeah, as I say,
Thank
just
you.
anyone listening, you must have a listen to Bipolar Explorer. Just some beautiful, beautiful music that'll just, transport you, as Michael would say,
There it is.
into
It's
another
not
dimension.
escapism.
So,
Unless you
Michael,
want it
thank
to
you
be.
very much.
You're so welcome. You're so very welcome.
So I'll say goodbye to you, Michael. I'm going to finish off tonight with one of your songs, which is Our Oneness Can Never Be Erased. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Someone told him early on that he should talk to her, imagining she could hear. At first it seemed a bit crazy, but it grew on him, and he grew to need it. What he needed now, and so often did, was to ask for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry, little sweetheart," he'd say, his eyes welling with tears. What even he couldn't imagine was how much she did hear. In the dream, he fell to his knees before her, but she lifted him up. The night sky opened above them. She crawled into his lap as they looked at the stars, and she whispered something in his ear. She also wrote it on his arm. "Our oneness," she told him, looking intently into his eyes, speaking with urgency and conviction. "Our oneness can never be erased." Our oneness can never be erased.